what are your feelings towards welfare?
Well, I think welfare is not as good as a job, but some people need it.
True.
And I think this country has to have minimum standards so that food stamps are provided, so that Medicaid provides health care standards. I mean, what we really want, though, is not a better welfare system. What we really want is a better workfare system where people have more choices and more opportunities and more jobs are grown. And nobody running for president talks about
I have a question about that, because even if we do get a really good workforce system, because, in different neighborhoods, the amount of funding for different schools just isn't standard. It's not met across the board, and it's not an even playing field. So that's one reason why people don't have opportunities and access to certain jobs. So what is your stance on education and educating different communities and different people so that once the workforce is built back up, they can get a job?
Absolutely. I think it's the key. I think education works best, which works locally and at the state level. I mean, do you know how much money we spend at the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. last year?
How much?
How much?
$79 billion. And it didn't educate
Where did it go?
Person. Yeah. It didn't educate a single person.
Where does that money go?
Money goes to bureaucrats.
So what do you think?
It doesn't go to educate. It ought to go to teachers who can teach. It ought to go to classrooms that are high-tech. It ought to go to access to all choices of school. I believe in competition and choice in education. I believe it works best. It works locally. Look, I've been involved in this battle all my life. I went to public schools. I was the youngest person in my college at the age of 16 when I went, a pretty damn tough school. I came out of public education to do it. You are right, young lady, to say that this is the key to our future, but the key is not in Washington, D.C. The key is in state after state where you know your teachers and you know your students and you can challenge them and set high standards.
So does the federal government not have any role in providing any money to states? What about in East New York and places in New York where you just have horrible, the median income is something like, $6,000 per family. How do you compensate for that unless the federal government gets involved?
Well, that's what the role of public education is, to provide to every child a decent education. And public education does not meet that standard. It does a terrible job. And that's why New York City is leading places on earth to provide choice, charters, and competition through schools. The school system is changing there. It's just slow and hard. I started 20 years ago when I was governor. Here's what I did. I tested the school teachers. I said, we test all these students, but no one tests the school teachers. I mean, you thought I was the biggest clown in American history. The unions got all over me. Well, teachers are protected. Protected from what? Ignorance?
That's
true.
true.
Ought to be able to teach. And so finally now, in state after state around the country, we're finding out who can teach and pay them. By the way, I tested my school teachers and gave them a 30% pay raise. And the state did that. That didn't come from local poor systems. That's something the state does. By the way, you asked me if the federal government can play a role in education. Absolutely. I would demonstrate and disseminate throughout America what systems are working and what doesn't work. I would show every state in America the way to do it and what works in other parts of the country. That is a legitimate role for the federal government. But the federal government, after justice is met, should not run our schools. We should do it locally and at the state level. It works best like that.